welcome to this edition of Between You and Me. My name is Tolulokpe Ibitola. It's the third edition of Between You and Me, and I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for joining me. Today, I have the pleasure of having Dr. Benjamin Maiangwa on my show. Yes, and Dr. Benjamin teaches global politics, global political economy. He's also a researcher on the contested notions of home, belonging, and indigeneity in post-colonial societies. He's a scholar in peace and conflict studies. And I must add this, that Benjamin is indeed a man of peace. He doesn't just study peace and conflict. You need to meet him and relate to him with him to, you don't even have to. The method of his name, Benjamin, you would think that he's really a man of peace. So I'm so honored and pleased to have him on this third edition of Between You and Me. But before I bring in my guest, excuse me for that, I'd like to let our viewers know that you can leave your comments in your questions in the comment section. You can leave your thoughts, your contributions, and please do well to click on the like button, do well to click on Love Reacts, and share this show for other people you care about. I promise it's going to be an interesting and engaging one. Thank you. So I'm pleased to bring in my guest, and here we have Dr. Benjamin Maiangwa. Wow. Look at that man of peace there. Good to have you here.
Thank you very much, Tolu. Great to be here.
Thank you so much for taking your time to be here. I know now, you know that scholars, researchers are always busy people, but you still took your time to be here. I appreciate you so much. And let's go quickly into the business because of our time. So I'd like us to start with the ongoing issue between Russia and Ukraine. And as a scholar of peace, of conflict and studies, now from the perspective of peace and conflict studies, I would like to hear your own view on the invasion of Russia in Ukraine.
Yeah, well, it's usually very difficult to assess a situation while it is happening, but I will try. The situation between Russia and Ukraine is an age-old issue. Mm-hmm. And many people would say it has its roots in the Cold War, the ideological battle between democracy and communism. Communism. And so in 1989, after the end of the Cold War, when an American political scientist was arguing that we have reached the end of history because of the triumph of neoliberalism and democracy, I think that argument was a little bit too early, right? Because
not knowing that it was just the beginning.
The beginning of history, indeed. So we have continued to see the tendency, of bipolarity. Russia trying to retain its own power base, as well as the U.S. And when I say the U.S., I also mean with all its allies, its European allies. So one of the very huge issues going on, I would say, is the attempt by Ukraine, by Georgia, and by the former Soviet state to join NATO and be part of this whole Western, democratic states, and Russia's own attempt to make sure that that region is protected, right, from the West. Yeah. So we saw that in Crimea in 2014, and now with the invasion of Ukraine, there is certainly nothing for him to get in Ukraine. Yeah, but he's kind of preserving that enclave, against the West, if I would put it that way. So that would be one of the causes. I wouldn't want to go much more into the issue, but maybe if we have time, we could do that.
Okay, thank you so much for that. Especially since it's an ongoing issue, and we shouldn't just quickly reach into conclusion. Thank you. And thank you. Good thing that you even understood the question. I wanted to say the invasion of Ukraine by Russia. I think I said invasion of Russia. Yes, invasion of Ukraine by Russia. And thank you for bringing in your perspective. Okay, and that leads me to the next question, which is going back home to the country of your birth. I understand you were born in Nigeria, right? And the Fulani herdsmen and Boko Haram crisis, don't you think it has taken too long? What do you think is not being done? And are there things that are being done that are not done in the right way?
I would have preferred to stay in Russia and Ukraine.
You don't want to come home? No.
I don't want to come home.
We have rest. Home is where we can close our eyes and sleep. I hope Nigeria is that kind of home. But what do we do?
Yeah,
So,
well,
let's come home.
to be honest with you, I remember in 2009 when I was returning home, and I arrived at the airport in I think it was in Lagos, and I took a connecting flight to Abuja. I remember how I was very suspicious of everyone around me. I thought everyone was a suicide bomber, because that was when Boko Haram had just started. When the leader was killed by the security forces. And then subsequently, things just got worse. So the thing with Nigeria is that once something starts, once you have a security crisis, it never goes away, right? It never goes away. We normalize it over time, and people get used to it.
It becomes the new normal.
Yes, it becomes the new normal. And so that's what we've been seeing with Boko Haram, and subsequently with the so-called Fulani herdsmen. And I must add, based on my conversation with my parents the other day, some of the kidnappings going on in northern Nigeria are not carried out mainly by the Fulanis, right? They are being conducted by almost anyone, with some sort of economic interest. So it's become certainly an exploitative economic activity that even family members and friends are involved at the moment. So it is really so difficult to contain a crisis of this magnitude when you have this array of actors in it. But at the same time, of course, we could talk about the failure of the state if you have time.
I think we'll get into that. So talking about, you mentioned the economic influence. Do you think there's also a political influence in this ongoing issue?
Well, it's really a confluence of so many actors, but also factors. So we can certainly not explain away the political influences, the economic, the religious, the historical, the psychocultural, the psychological, and so on. And, when you talk about the political aspect, then I guess what people often make reference to would be the elite in question, right? The political leaders who are, in one way or another, maybe sponsoring this kind of crisis for whatever parochial gain or gains. So there is that, and then there is also the democratic space in Nigeria since 1999 that has opened up, I guess, spaces for agitation, either by minority groups, but also the fear within the majority groups to consolidate their power base. So there are all those really factors involved.
So we would say that there are many channels open up, and people are just taking advantage of these channels.
People are taking advantage because the state has allowed them to actually
exactly. The state has allowed them, because if there was the right thing, the right action taken, it wouldn't have gotten this far. And you talked about agitation of the minority when you just spoke now. And I don't want to say this set of people are minority, but let's look at it this way. In July 2021, you published an article titled, "What Drives the Indigenous People of Biafra's Relentless Efforts for Secession?" I hope you can remember that article.
I hope so.
July 2021. I think it was published by The Conversation. And there you talked about mobilization process, the role of the government, and the expectations of the parties involved in this agitation. And looking at let me, if you permit me, the unfriendly disposition of the present administration towards this IPOB in the East. Do you think that the present administration has what it takes to negotiate a productive solution where these people cry, the IPOB, seeking for this belonging, agitating for belonging? Do you think there can be a productive resolution?
I think you've mentioned, given the disposition of the present administration, we cannot expect. They said that someone cannot give what they don't have, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So we can't expect them to act in any other way than they have been acting. And it's really quite unfortunate because there have been opportunities, to make amends and to nip this crisis in the bud. And I'm not saying to undermine the agitations. You can't nip a crisis that has been going on for such a long time in the bud simply through military means. For example, people in the Southeast are really aggrieved, and they have every right to be aggrieved, right? If we look at the history of the war itself, 1967 to 1970, they were the vanquished. So the one statement that there was no victor, no vanquished, I think, of course, it's not true. There was certainly a vanquish, and the people lost their economic means of livelihood. They lost their homes. A lot of people were killed in what so many analysts would refer to as genocide. So it is not an issue that you would again use the same approach that you used to cause the issue to resolve it, right? So the cure should not be worse than the disease, right? And that is what we're having with, like you said, the disposition of the current administration. Many people have called for dialogue because I think that when the agitation started, not just with the indigenous peoples of Biafra, even with Maso, it wasn't violent. The same thing with the Niger Delta agitations. Those begin usually as some sort of a pacifist movement calling for some sort of social justice, and then even with Boko Haram,
and when the government refuses to listen to them in that subtle manner, then they come in another way.
Exactly.
And you're talking about the 1967 to 1970. I read some books about civil war, and even though I was not there, I was like, people went through all this, and I just imagine that people going through it at that particular time. And so my heart is even with the Ukrainians now, with the kind of situation, what they will be going through at this present time.
Right.
We hope that all this get resolved so soon, so that this will be stories of in the past.
Right.
Thank you. And I want to let's leave the crisis a little. Something more. Okay. You grew up in Nigeria, specifically Kaduna, and okay, I think we are still in the mode of crisis because of this question, and experienced different conflicts in the region. I had a friend then who told me that it was just God. It was by God's grace that their house was not invaded because of the crisis that happened then. And I am asking this question now: that do you think some of these crises that happened influenced your choice of studying peace and conflict?
Yeah, you were saying we should leave the crisis aside, and I wanted to tell you I was born in crisis.
There's no human world without crisis.
I was born in crisis in that sense that I grew up in a context where we constantly were experiencing ethno-religious, violence, riots, conflict, whatever name you want to give it. From the age of 7, I remembered we fled to a nearby military barracks, to seek refuge. I was a young child, didn't really know much. I was even excited because we left home, we were in the barracks playing with other kids. But we stayed there for about a month. And when we came back home, on my way back home, you could see all the ruins of that crisis, you know, the debris and everything. And it was really just so sad, even at that age. Then I remembered, I think most of the stories you would hear from people would be stories from the 2000 Sharia crisis. That was the turning point. I mean, we've had cases of violence in the 80s, but the Sharia crisis was the turning point in many ways, you know. And so many people that had considered Kaduna State and the North a liberal city or area to live, they fled. I lost a lot of my friends, I lost neighbors, extended family members, and indeed we were lucky to still have, you know, my family members around now, because most of them went through hell, you know, on that day in February. And I think the anniversary was just like 3 days ago, in February and also in May of 2000. So, yes, Kaduna is notorious, and not just Kaduna, some part of northern Nigeria and the whole country at large. But Kaduna in particular is notorious both for its ethno-religious violence, but also, interestingly, for its symbiosis and solidarity. You know, these things happen side by side. We don't emphasize the other story. I grew up in a context, you know, where you would play with your Christian and Muslim friends, you know, without thinking much about it. You go to Sunday school, you go to madrasas, and you know, you go eat in your neighbor's home. But those things happen like within a flash, right? To distort those kinds of relationships. But so we should also kind of, in a way, emphasize that aspect, while at the same time, you know, calling out the evil, you know, going on in many of these places in Nigeria. Yeah, so I was born in crisis in that sense. I was also born in love and solidarity with my Christian and Muslim neighbors. And at that point, I thought I was also born with a sense of duty. So imagine being a young child and feeling responsible for you know, your people, your environment, and thinking that there must be something that you can do. And so at that stage, I was hoping indeed that I would, you know, study and work in an area that would allow me to be of relevance.
I was about to ask you again. Okay, now we reached the point. So it has a way of influencing your choice of studying peace and conflict. Okay, good. And you mentioned that we should not just concentrate on the other side of the crisis and conflict. There are good times. And I want to say that don't forget that when a dog bites human, it's not news. It's like a common thing. But when a human being bites a dog, everybody talks about it. So that's why when it's something negative, it spreads so much. People quickly forget the good things and the good times. Okay, so I get that. No wonder. And you've actually been a man of peace too. So, and I understand you've been in different places, you're well traveled. You've been in Japan, you've been in South Africa, and now you're in Canada, seeking knowledge. I want to ask you that, what experience along the racial line do you have or have you gained? Is there something you want to talk about, the racial line or understanding of our common humanity? Is there something you would like to talk about today?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I started experiencing, I guess, let me call it racism. Racism from Nigeria. People call it colorism, people call it all sort of names.
Or tribalism.
When it has to do with the color of your skin, is racism. I have a language for it now, because at the time growing up, I didn't know what it was about. When people will look at you and go like, see how you are dark like the devil, see, you know, your black face, that is why you are like this, that is why you are like that. So they attribute the features of, you know, your body or even the color of your skin to certain characteristics or idiosyncrasies. And I endured that as a kid, you know, and I always knew something was wrong, but I didn't have the language to understand it. But when I left Nigeria for the first time, went to South Africa, I even remember when I returned to Nigeria after 2 years, one of my friends looked at me and said, "You haven't changed a bit, you're still black." Uh, so I think they were expecting that just going to South Africa was going to
Will
transform.
change you.
I was like, well, you've got something else coming your way. So anyway, that is just an aside. But so my sojourn in South Africa, subsequently in Europe, in Japan, and in Canada, I think has taught me really quite a lot about. You talk about the oneness. I have come to understand that at the core of it all, we all want the same things. We want to be happy. We want to succeed. We want joy. We want comfort, and so on. And so the whole racial categories are really constructs. These are constructs that we have inherited from the colonial era. Or maybe even the pre-colonial times when people make those kinds of distinctions. I'm not sure those distinctions were very prominent then. So these are constructs. At the core of the human existence is, the calling for love, for dignity, for uniqueness, for comfort. So living in, if you want me to speak about, some of the unique experiences that I've
No,
had.
don't mind. I'm sure our viewers would like to hear
In
some
this
of these
place,
experiences.
I could.
Please
South
go ahead.
Africa was quite unique in many ways because, yes, it was the first time for me to live in a rainbow nation. Nigeria is a rainbow nation too in many ways with its diversity. But
Multicultural.
I lived in South Africa, people will talk about the color of the skin with, the so-called white, black, colored, and so on. And for me, it was interesting at the beginning, and it was fascinating. I was studying with students from all over the world, and especially in Africa. So that was really the beginning of my education, probably in human relations, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I would put it that way. And that was the beginning of my understanding of really the kinds of things that we all desire. And so when I left South Africa, and the reason I left South Africa was because I always had it within me to explore more, that there is more about,
There's always
the
more.
human experience that probably being in
Oliver
South
Twist.
Africa would not expose me to. And so I went to Asia. Asia was not my first choice, but I was fascinated by the UN. I wanted to work with the UN at the time. And
Mm-hmm.
because I couldn't, I thought I could go to a UN university. So that was why I was able to go to Japan. And being in Japan was a shock. I wasn't ready for Japan the first 6 months because whereas in South Africa, where I could see diversity, there wasn't such diversity in Japan. I
In
was the
Japan.
diversity in many areas. I would be on a train and I would be the only different person.
You're
I
the
would be
only
in a
black.
shop mall and I would be the only different. So I was always conscious of myself. And one interesting thing that happened in Japan was that I realized that race didn't really matter as far as you guys have got something in common. So I would meet a European on the street and he would call me, oh, my brother, how
Wow.
are you? Without us really getting to know each other previously. I would meet an African, I would meet a Latin American, and so on. And we would stop on the street because visibly we could see that we are not Japanese. And so that was for us really a point of convergence. And I thought, so this thing is possible in an area where you realize that you need the other. Why is it that we can't do it, worldwide? And so I found that really quite interesting. And eventually I got settled in Japan. Japanese people are the nicest people. Of course, they've got their own issues, but, very humble. And I left Japan after 2 years. Again, my need to explore further brought me to North America. I came with the same attitude that maybe when I see an African or see a European, I will go like my brother.
You get the
and
brother.
I go like, hey, and they will look at me like, what is wrong with you? So, I mean, it's been a beautiful experience. And, when people say we don't see color, they always say it's a lie. But I think I have reached a point in my own existence where those things are beginning to fizzle out. I'm not saying I don't see color, but somehow for me, really, I focus more on, the heart, the spirituality, the connection that we are having, the humanity. The color becomes pronounced when you start becoming a bit aggressive or racist towards me. And then I noticed that.
Okay, this is
Otherwise
very
I
true.
go into, places with an open heart.
Thank you so much, Benjamin, for that insightful and enlightenment. So, before I ask the next question, I see that we have a question in the comment section. And before I go into that question, I want to say thank you to everyone joining us, taking your time. And if you're going to be watching this as a replay, please put in where you're watching from and type in your replay. And the question, okay, let me go to the question. The question is is from Joe Hardbro. Thank you, Joe, for joining. So, how attainable is global peace, or is it just an illusion?
If it is an illusion, then probably it's an illusion that we should all live in. At least, maybe that sense of illusion might keep us going, that sense of hope. I think what would be so sad is to live without hope, right? Living with a hope of possibilities is very important, even when we know that things could get worse. Global peace may not be possible, but the hope of it is a possibility. So I would respond in that philosophical manner.
So we should continue to live in illusion.
No, we continue to live in hope.
Okay,
We
hope.
call
Let's not
hope
call it
illusion.
illusion. Okay.
Yeah, let's call it hope.
Let's assume all is well, even
And
when
we do our part wherever we find ourselves. Sometimes I think we
yeah.
tend to think globally, but let's act locally. Someone was asked, what should I do out there? Say, go back to your family and love your family. Go love your friends. Do something for your environment. Those little acts will count. Little things, but faithfulness in little things. I was once told they make someone great.
Exactly. Like this Chinese philosopher, I can't remember the name, is it Lu or something? It says that if you want peace in the world, it must start from our own heart. If you want peace in the world, then there must be peace in the nation. If you want peace in the nation, there must be peace in the city. If you want peace in the city, there must be peace in your, I think, society or your home. And if you want peace in your home, it must start from your heart. So if you want peace in the world, let's always do our bit. Let's do our own part wherever we find ourselves. And it may not get to the whole world, but in our own space, we know we have done what we have to do. Thank you so much, Dr. Ben. And Joe, I hope we're able to address your question. Please put in your question for as many people that have other questions, and kindly share this program to your loved ones, to everyone around you. You're all appreciated. Now let's go to our next question, and it's still in line with the question of traveling. We went to these places that you've mentioned, Asia, Europe, and now North America, looking for education. Now, looking at our own Nigeria, our own home, the education system is facing a lot of challenges, a lot of issues. So what would you say you learned from these places that you've been that we can bring into our own system, that we can bring into our own educational system and will work for us? There's things that people can bring in that may not work, not just because people are doing it, considering how multicultural and the way our society is structured. Things that you think that can work for us.
I try to be careful not to make those kinds of prescriptions, taking things, because if we look at some of the crises we are facing, is because, again, the Russian-Ukrainian one, you want to impose a particular model of your own particular state model on another country may not work. One thing I've realized with Nigerians, and I'm going to say this, when I was leaving Nigeria for the first time, I couldn't secure my visa, and school started in January. I started in April. There was no online or Zoom classes at the time, so I had to wait. I was not even doing any reading, and I did not defer the admission because otherwise I was going to lose it. So I got my visa in March. March end, I think 28th of March. I started school after Easter. I remember my first time in class, I looked at, it was a class on logic. I did philosophy.
Philosophy.
So you can imagine logic. And that day they were discussing the most difficult theme in logic, which is about, making like syllogism, how to
Okay.
arrive at a contradiction and
Yeah.
whatever, uh,
With
universal
butter
negative,
and all
universal
propositions
particular, those
and all
kinds of
that.
arguments. The lecturer was just designing some stuff on the board, and I hear my colleagues going, hi, yeah, 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 yeah. And I was like, if these guys who have been here since January are exclaiming in this manner, what hope do I have? I remember leaving the class that day with a colleague of mine that we arrived together. He looked at me and said, guy, na Naija we be. Na Naija we be. Forget it. Na Naija we be.
Naija no dey carry last.
Naija no dey carry life. So I was like, maybe, yeah, na Naija we be. I wasn't very convinced, but I was like, no, na Naija we be. We can do this. Truth be told, that semester was one of my best. I only had about a month or two, but it ended in praise, like we say in Nigeria. Now the point I'm trying to make is this: most of the excellent students you find abroad are from Nigeria. Meaning that something is working in Nigeria.
Exactly.
There is something working in Nigeria, but the problem, if you ask me, what should we bring? Probably we should bring the environment, the laboratories, we should bring the books, we should bring, whatever, the grants, the scholarships. We should create an enabling environment, because our students in Nigeria are very, very ready. They are determined, they are resilient. So I want to acknowledge that. I want to acknowledge what we see when people come from Nigeria, the strides that they make, the scholarships, that they win and so on. So that is something that Nigerians export, and it's sad for the country. We are losing quite a lot. So instead of us bringing to, Nigeria, I don't think we have much to bring. Nigerians actually have a lot within them. We just need to create the necessary environment. And we will see things flourishing.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. We hope that leaders will do something quick about this, so that all these good resources, human resources that we have, will not keep living. Talking about the students, even at places of work. I remember it's a time when I was moved to a new bit in my place of work, and I had a meeting with my boss. The first time he heard my voice, you're a Nigerian. I said, yes. Oh, I've worked with so many Nigerians. They are wonderful people. They are brilliant people. As in, that was what he said at work, and to God be the glory, I've not fallen expectation of that first statement. So Nigerian are really human resources that need to be looked into, taken care of. I hope our leaders will create this enabling environment for us to have a better world. And we talked about having -30, -25 degrees earlier. If our country was good and everything working for us, we won't be here in the -30s and 25. Okay. Thank you. It says, I would like to hear your view on the subject of home. You have lived on different continents. Where is home to you? If you may, you can also speak to why is it that the Black person does not feel at home anywhere, not even in their home countries.
Yeah, I have reached a stage where I decided that home will be in my heart. And home is what I carry with me. All the love that I've received, all the hard work, all the memories, I store them in my heart. For where your heart is, there your treasure will be, right?
Yes,
the scripture says. That is a very convenient way of looking at it, because the other way would be quite disturbing and unsettling. Nigeria is a place where whenever you think of visiting, you are always, you're always tense. You are always worried. You are worried about your safety. You are worried about the safety of your family members. Home shouldn't be a place like that. But home, we should also understand home broadly as both a place of comfort, relaxation. It could also be a place of dislocation, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, so maybe what we need to start doing, especially when he said what he said about when a black person doesn't feel a sense of home anywhere, is to start recreating a new sense of home, right? Yeah, within the intersection of different borders. Those borders could be, of course, physical, they could be psychological. The border between, your identity and that of the other person. Where is the medium? Where is the midpoint between you and
Meeting
that person?
point.
Yeah, so for me, I have resigned myself to that spiritual understanding of home, that would give me some sense of comfort, some sense of stability. And then from that space, I can also be able to provide that feeling to another person that encounters me.
Sure.
Someone asked me this question last week here in Thunder Bay. So I moved from Winnipeg to Thunder Bay, and they were asking, so why Thunder Bay? I mean, Thunder Bay is a much smaller place and it's not as diverse. And what do you feel here? Do you feel a sense of home? I said, talking to you for me at this moment is home, right?
Mm.
And then eventually going back to engage in my activity is also homemaking. So the activity of homemaking should never stop, right?
Mm-hmm.
We should always be engaging in that process of finding meaning, right, in the things that we do, in who we are, understanding who we are, understanding our own positionality within the spaces that we live in, our own calling. So if you feel you're in a place where you are living out your calling and is giving you that sense of fulfillment, maybe create some sense of home around that. We may never be able to get it all. Like you said, there is winter here, then you go back to Nigeria, there's something else.
There's
So
something else.
what do you trade, right? And then how do you negotiate all those things within you? So I know I'm being a bit what is the word?
Diplomatic. Yeah.
Uh,
You're a
I'm
man
not
of
as
peace and
practical
conflict.
as I
So
should
we
be with that
understand
question.
you.
But if I'm going to be practical, I think even as we are here, we are always thinking of where we come from, which is Nigeria. I'm always thinking about Nigeria when I would go to Nigeria, and I must say this: even when I talk about the home space as being psychological or spiritual, the physical is also important. The first time I went home and realized my parents had moved from where I was born to a new area, I was a bit disappointed because I couldn't connect with that area. I realized I was always going back, to the place where I was born, where I also couldn't connect because people had moved on. There are new buildings, there are just specific groups of people there who are not from my own ethnic group or religious group. And so you have to start again that whole process of homemaking. And so it's really sad, so many things could dislodge, that sense of home in a person, and it's your own responsibility to recreate it.
Thank you so much, Benjamin. So, first we must build our home in our hearts. It's an ongoing process. Okay, thank you. So, I want to ask this question: considering the demand for education abroad by younger Nigerians, as someone who has a good experience in this, traveling out for your abroad education, what would your advice be for such young people who are seeking to travel abroad for education?
Hmm. For the most part, I don't want to undermine so many of the influences that I've had, but I think people have to somehow carve out a niche and do things for themselves. Utilize the resources that they have at hand. Me and one of my friends, we used to say that, there was no magic to what people have achieved outside, to be honest. But at the same time, we have to acknowledge equality of opportunities and chances aren't the same, right? But we have also seen the possibility of the human spirit when you apply yourself. And that is something I always reflect on, because there are things that sometimes I would almost give up on. and then
Mm-hmm.
I just make the last push, and all of a sudden it changes everything. So utilizing the resources you have, the networks you have, the internet is a very powerful tool. Um, at the time, I was using the internet every day to seek out scholarships, and people thought sometimes, I was going bananas
Good.
with the whole scholarship thing. Yeah, so, but that was it. That was the only way I knew I was able to succeed. And that has been, what has been carrying me through. The networks that I have, the the scholarships that I've been able to win, and of course, you win that scholarship also because you apply yourself to what you are doing, to your studies. Because not having
Yes.
a great GPA or CGPA could also really affect you in that sense,
Mm-hmm.
which is why so many people aren't really able to get scholarships. So yes, focusing on when I was doing my undergrad, I said to myself that no matter what happens, I'm struggling. I have to make sure that I finish well. I have to make sure that that doesn't distort my studies. And that was the key I needed to land my first job. That was the key I needed, to proceed, with my studies. And so that kind of determination, and of course, I have to acknowledge the financial assistance from friends, from family members, and so on. Things are really difficult. I get it. But, the whole famous saying of never giving up, I think is quite important to in this instance. Seek out avenues, seek out people, seek out mentors. And I'm not saying studying abroad is the only way, but if you want to, if that is the path you want to follow, understand what you are chasing, understand what you are leaving behind. Someone asked me that question: what are you running away from, and what are you running towards? So those two things, I guess, we need to ask ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's very deep. What are you running away from and what are you running to? Be sure of why you are running. Why are you running? Thank you so much for this very insightful session. So, and we are almost at the end of this session. I want to ask you this between you and me question. Just the two of us. I hope I won't put you on the hot spot now. So, I was informed that you wanted to become and you wanted to become a priest. You wanted to go into priesthood,
Yeah,
and now you are into academics.
yeah.
Can you tell us the reason for the change of thought? What informed your
I don't
decision?
think there has been any change, to be honest.
Okay.
The only change is that I've not had a bishop or a pope laying hands on me
Okay.
to pronounce me a priest. Because I
A
think that
priest.
had, if we, again, this has to do with the whole idea of the calling that I'm talking about. You can't run away
Mm-hmm.
from your calling. And when I left that process, I wasn't running away from it. I was still carrying my own sense of identity uh, within my Christian faith. I was still carrying that relationship with God. Yes, it's not always perfect, but it's something that has continued to inform even the choices of what I study, even how I study, even how I teach. I remember I was having this conversation with a colleague of mine. She was asking me about my methodology. My teaching is all about human transformation and changing the mind and the heart and starting from ourselves what we can do. It's not all about the theories, the method, and so on that, yes, we all know about. We can read and be intelligent, but who are you at heart, right? So I'm always concerned about those kinds of questions. So when I shared that methodology with a friend of mine, a colleague here, she looked at me and said, "You are some sort of a missionary." And I was like, "Oh, okay. Is that really obvious?" Because indeed, my dad would always tell me that indeed you never proceeded with your training, but you are still a missionary, whether you want to accept it or not. So I've accepted that identity, and yeah, it's continued to inform my relationship with people. I'm not always getting it right, but I think I'm always, aware of where I'm coming from in that sense. So I left because, yes, and people leave for various reasons. You feel that maybe your journey there is over. I think in life sometimes we have so many directions we have to take to arrive
Mhm.
at the same destination,
Mhm.
right? And so for me, that destination, of course, is my rootedness in my own spirituality and my sense of connection with God. But then the directions in which I will have to go, I think, are quite varied. And so I could begin from the seminary, go through the higher institution, be a politician, a diplomat, and all that. All those are, kind of
You are
coagulating
still on the path.
to get me to that, path. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much. It's been an engaging session, and I wish we could continue, go over and over again. But because of time, we have to just end it here. Time will not permit us to go on and on again. So it's such a delight to have you here, and I'm trusting that we'll have you again. That
Thank
you'll be back very soon. Thank you so much, Dr. Benjamin Maiangwa. And to our viewers who have taken so much time to be here with us, we appreciate you so much and we do not take you for granted. Please react. I see some have been reacting. Thank you for reacting. Share this video as well to people and let's spread this good news. My name is Tolulope Ibitola. Bye for now.
you very much.
Bye.